The sky above Caro's 9 burned in layers of blue and white fire. Governor Taurex stood on the balcony of the Planetary Council Tower, his four-jointed hands gripping the crystalline railing as the first Karnak warship descended through the atmosphere. It did not rush. It never did. Speed was unnecessary when fear arrived ahead of you. Below him, the capital city froze. Traffic halted mid-lane. Market stalls fell silent. Millions looked up at the same moment, recognizing the unmistakable silhouette, a serrated hull shaped like a blade, glowing crimson along its ventral ridges. The Karnak Dominion had arrived. "Open a channel," Taurex said, forcing calm into his voice. "We surrender. There is no resistance." The tower's calm officer hesitated, mandibles twitching. "Governor, they are not responding." The warship stopped directly above the city center. Its shadow swallowed entire districts. A low-frequency hum rolled across the ground, vibrating through bone and steel alike. Panic rippled outward, first whispers, then screams. Taurex had seen this before, on other worlds. He knew what came next. A beam lanced downward, not at the council tower, not at military installations, but at the civilian quarter near the river. A single strike. Surgical. Entire residential blocks vanished in a silent flash, replaced by a crater of molten glass. The message was clear: surrender was irrelevant. Moments later, black shapes detached from the warship and rained toward the surface. Karnak ground forces landed with mechanical precision, armored forms unfolding like predatory insects. They did not fire randomly. They moved with intent, hunting leaders, broadcasters, anyone with a voice. Taurex's communicator crackled to life. "Governor," a voice purred, smooth and amused. "Your world is charming. Weak, but charming." Taurex swallowed. "Overlord Zirith," he said, recognizing the voice carried on every horror story in the Outer Rim. "We will comply. Whatever tribute you demand." "Tribute?" Zirith laughed softly. "No. Tribute implies value." The image resolved, a massive figure seated on a throne of living metal, eyes glowing amber, tusked mouth curled in satisfaction. Overlord Zirith the Devourer, supreme warlord of the Karnak Dominion, leaned forward. "I am here to remind your neighbors," Zirith continued, "what happens when fear fades." The channel cut. Explosions echoed through the city as Karnak troops breached the council tower. Taurex turned as armored figures stormed the chamber, weapons raised. He did not resist. Resistance prolonged suffering. That was the lesson the galaxy had learned. He was dragged into the plaza below, forced to his knees alongside ministers, scholars, and civilian representatives. Above them, recording drones hovered, broadcasting live across known space. Zirith appeared again, this time projected at colossal scale. "Observe," the Overlord announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the planet and far beyond it. "I do not destroy worlds. That would be wasteful. I destroy hope." Taurex met the camera, forcing his voice steady. "To anyone watching," he said, "do not." The execution was swift. Clean. Purposeful. Zirith watched without emotion, then gestured lazily. "Leave survivors," he ordered. "Let them flee. Stories travel faster than fleets." Light years away, within the vast orbital structure known as the Concord of Species, silence followed the transmission. The chamber was immense, ringed by representatives of dozens of civilizations. Holographic stars rotated slowly at its core, indifferent to suffering. The footage of Caro's 9 replayed once, then again, before the feed finally cut. "This cannot continue," said Ambassador Viral of the Suthari, his feathers ruffling in distress. "Entire systems are surrendering without a fight." "And what do you propose?" replied Councillor Bren of the Ulmer Collective. "Another coalition fleet? We tried that twice. Both were annihilated." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. "The Karnak do not seek territory," another delegate added. "They seek obedience. Resistance only invites annihilation." Fear shaped every word spoken. History weighed heavier than morality. The presiding arbiter raised a limb. We condemn these actions, she said carefully. But open war would destabilize the entire Perseus arm. The Concord is not prepared. Prepared. The word tasted bitter in the air. A junior analyst stepped forward hesitantly. There is additional information. The chamber turned. A trade convoy was destroyed 3 cycles ago. The analyst continued. Edge of disputed space. Minimal strategic value. And? Bren asked impatiently. And the convoy was human. That drew a few glances, mostly dismissive. The humans again, someone muttered. Unfortunate but expected. They operate too close to unstable regions. They are new, another said. They don't understand the rules yet. The analyst hesitated. There was a distress signal. Partial. It shows the convoy attempting to surrender. The arbiter's eyes narrowed. And? They were executed anyway. The chamber fell quiet. Humans were not a military power by galactic standards. Their fleets were small. Their borders modest. They traded efficiently, negotiated patiently, and avoided conflict whenever possible. They were reasonable. Reasonable species did not survive encounters with Zirith. The humans will protest, Brent said finally. They always do. Diplomacy. Condemnations. Perhaps sanctions. Yes, Viral agreed softly. They will learn, as we all did. No one noticed the analyst's final addition, barely audible over the rising discussion. There were survivors, he said. They transmitted the footage directly to Earth. Far away, on a blue world orbiting an unremarkable star, the recording ended. No screams followed. No shouts. No dramatic speeches. Only silence. And in that silence, something ancient and patient began to move. The recording ended without commentary. In the Situation Chamber beneath United Nations Stellar Command, the image froze on the final frame, a human freighter captain kneeling on a scorched deck, hands raised, eyes steady. The Karnak executioner stood behind him, weapon already charged. No one spoke. Admiral Hannah Kovacs broke the silence by pausing the feed and standing. Confirm authenticity. Confirmed, replied Director Chen from Intelligence. Multiple signal triangulations. No edits. Time-stamped 42 hours ago. The room remained still. No anger was displayed, no visible grief. Only attention. Casualties? Kovacs asked. 212 civilians. 12 crew. No survivors from the Karnak boarding party. Kovacs nodded once. Pattern match? Shin brought up additional data. 17 similar incidents across non-aligned systems. Same fleet signature. Same execution protocol. Someone exhaled quietly. Not relief, calculation. So, Kovacs said, folding her hands behind her back. This wasn't a misunderstanding. No, Chen replied. It was a demonstration. Around the table sat officers, analysts, diplomats, and strategists. No one suggested sanctions. No one spoke of condemnation. Those words belonged to species that could afford to be ignored. What's the Concord's position? Asked Secretary General Okafor. Publicly? Chen answered. Concern. Privately? Paralysis. Okafor looked at the frozen image again. They think we'll accept that. They think we'll adapt, Chen said. Like everyone else. Kovacs turned. Options. A general spoke first. Full mobilization would trigger a regional war. The Karnak thrive on escalation. Diplomacy? Another offered without conviction. They executed surrendering civilians, Okafor said flatly. That door closed when they opened fire. Silence returned, heavier than before. Kovacs tapped the table once. Then we proceed with containment. Several heads lifted. Containment? Okafor repeated. Yes, she said. Not punishment. Not conquest. Removal. Chen frowned slightly. With respect, Admiral, removal implies ending the threat. Kovacs finished. Completely. No one argued. Select a commander, she continued. One who understands restraint. Chen hesitated. One ship? Kovacs met his eyes. One ship. Captain Elias Rourke stood alone in the observation bay of the UNS Retribution as Earth curved silently below. The ship's hull reflected starlight without ornament, its design functional to the point of austerity. He heard footsteps behind him but did not turn. You've seen the footage, Kovacs said, stopping beside him. Yes, ma'am. And you understand the assignment? Yes. She studied him for a moment. No fleet. No backup. No political cover. I know. This ship enters Karnak-controlled space alone, she continued. If you fail, we disavow escalation. If you succeed, the galaxy changes. Rourke nodded once. Understood. You're not being sent to win a war, Kovacs added. You're being sent to end a behavior. Rourke finally turned. His expression was calm, but not cold. Fear spreads because it's allowed to, he said. That's what the Karnak rely on. And what do we rely on? She asked. Clarity, Rourke replied. And finality. Kovacs held his gaze, then extended a data slate. Rules of engagement. Rourke scanned it quickly. No civilian casualties. No planetary bombardment. No unnecessary force. Capture of leadership prioritized over destruction. He handed it back. Accepted. You don't hesitate, she observed. Rourke looked past her, toward the stars. Hesitation is what keeps this going. The UNS Retribution departed without ceremony. No press release followed. No broadcast announcement. In the crowded channels of galactic media, the launch of a single human warship barely registered. Observers noted its modest mass and dismissed it as symbolic. In the Concord of Species, a junior delegate laughed openly. They're sending one ship? Humans dramatize their failures, another replied. Let them posture. No one noticed the absence of human diplomats from the chamber. On board Retribution, Rourke walked the command deck as systems came online. The crew was small, hand-picked, efficient. No one spoke unnecessarily. Navigation ready, reported Lieutenant Alvarez. Course set, added Commander Imani. Direct approach. No evasive routing. Rourke nodded. Good. Alvarez hesitated. Sir? Karnak response time? Immediate, Rourke said. They'll want an audience. And if they fire first? They won't, Rourke replied. They prefer to watch fear arrive. The ship crossed the boundary into disputed space. Sensors flared as long-range Karnak arrays locked on. Shadows appeared at the edge of detection, patrol vessels adjusting position, predators circling. On the bridge, a warning chimed softly. Incoming transmission, Imani said. Rourke took his seat. Put it through. The image resolved into Overlord Ziritha's throne chamber, vast and grotesque. The Karnak warlord leaned forward, eyes narrowing with amusement. A human, Zirith said. Alone. Rourke met his gaze. Captain Elias Rourke, United Nations Stellar Navy. Zirith smiled. You are lost. No, Rourke replied evenly. I arrived exactly where intended. The Overlord laughed, a deep, echoing sound. Then kneel, Captain. I may yet let your species learn through survival. Rourke's voice did not rise. You executed civilians who surrendered. Yes, Zirith said. And that behavior ends now. Silence stretched between them. Then Zirith leaned back, still smiling. Send your fleet, he said. I will enjoy breaking it. Rourke shook his head once. There is no fleet. Ziritha's smile faltered, just slightly. Rourke continued. Wars are loud, Overlord. This is not a war. He cut the channel. Around Retribution, Karnak vessels began to close in, confident and numerous. The galaxy watched, certain of the outcome. Rourke rested his hands on the armrests, eyes forward. "Stand by," he said quietly. The lesson was about to begin. The first Karnak warship slid into firing range without announcing itself. On the Retribution's bridge, no alarms sounded beyond a muted proximity alert. Tactical displays filled with red vectors as more signatures emerged from the dark: heavy cruisers, carrier nodes, interdiction platforms. They moved with the confidence of predators that had never known resistance. "Encirclement pattern confirmed," Commander Imani said calmly. "They're closing in layers." Classic intimidation. Rourke watched the map settle into a tightening ring. "They want us to feel small." Lieutenant Alvarez glanced up. "Do we comply with protocol silence?" Rourke nodded. "Let them talk." The Karnak fleet completed the circle, engines flaring as weapons systems armed openly. Power spikes rippled through space like muscle flexing before a strike. Long-range observers across the Perseus arm leaned closer to their screens. The outcome, to them, was already written. The channel reopened. Zareth filled the display again, larger now, his expression amused rather than hostile. "You see," he said, gesturing lazily, "this is generosity. I allow you to understand the scale of your mistake." Rourke remained seated. "Your fleet density is inefficient." The smile faded. "Explain." "You're wasting mass on intimidation," Rourke replied. "Fear requires proximity. You could accomplish the same effect with half these ships." A murmur rippled through the Karnak command deck behind Zareth. The Overlord's eyes narrowed. "You speak as if you've studied us." "We study outcomes," Rourke said. "You've had the same one for centuries." Zareth leaned forward, tusks catching the light. "And yet you came alone." "Yes." "Why?" Rourke paused, just long enough to matter. "Because fleets escalate. This does not." Zareth laughed sharply. "You think restraint is strength?" "I think terror is a crutch," Rourke answered. "And crutches fail under pressure." The channel cut, not by Rourke this time. "Weapon signatures spiking," Imani said. "Multiple target locks." "Still holding fire," Alvarez added. "They're waiting." Rourke nodded. "Then we'll go first." "Authorization?" Imani asked. "Granted," Rourke said. Phase 1. The Retribution did not fire a shot. Instead, space itself seemed to hesitate. Across the Karnak fleet, sensors flickered. Data streams stuttered. Communication relays began dropping offline one by one, cascading outward from the human ship like falling dominoes. Targeting solutions dissolved into static. Shield harmonics slipped out of alignment. "What's happening?" a Karnak officer shouted over the open channel. Zareth rose from his throne. "Reassert control." But control had already left. 3 cruisers drifted as their engines cut out simultaneously, momentum carrying them into slow, uncontrolled arcs. A carrier node lost gravity plating, its internal decks collapsing into chaos. No explosions followed. No debris fields blossomed. The damage was invisible and total. On the Retribution, Alvarez stared at the tactical display. Systems collapse confirmed across 20% of their fleet. Localized, Imani noted. Precision limited. No civilian spillover. Rourke nodded once. Good. The Karnak fleet hesitated for the first time in recorded history. Zareth slammed a clawed fist against his throne. "Fire! All batteries!" Several ships attempted to comply. None succeeded. Weapons failed to cycle. Power reroutes stalled. Command codes rejected themselves as invalid. The Karnak relied on redundancy and brute force, systems layered upon systems. Humanity had turned that strength into a vulnerability. Zareth's channel reopened, his composure cracking. "What have you done?" Rourke leaned forward slightly. "We disconnected you." "Impossible," Zareth snarled. "No species has breached Karnak command architecture." "We didn't breach it," Rourke said. "We let it collapse under its own weight." The Overlord's eyes flicked sideways as another officer whispered urgently. For the first time, Uncertainty crept into his posture. You think this wins? Zirith demanded. You are still outnumbered. Yes, Rourke agreed. But you're no longer coordinated. He gestured subtly. Phase 2. A single beam fired from the Retribution, thin and precise. It struck a Karnak dreadnought, not at its core, not at its weapons, but at a narrow band along its spine. The effect was immediate. The massive vessel went dark, drifting inert. Gasps echoed across open channels. That ship, Zirith said slowly, has never been disabled. Rourke's voice remained steady. First time for everything. Fear did not arrive all at once. It crept in through small realizations that the human ship was not overheating, that its power output remained stable, that it had not maneuvered aggressively even once. This was not desperation. This was control. Across the galaxy, analysts recalculated. Concord delegates fell silent. The narrative they had relied on, numbers equals safety, age equals superiority, began to fracture. On the Karnak flagship, Ziritha's confidence bled away, replaced by something older and far more dangerous to him, doubt. You will not leave this space, he said, forcing authority into his tone. I will grind you down eventually. Rourke met his gaze. No, he said. You won't. Why not? Because you're already deciding whether to retreat, Rourke replied. And you've never done that before. The Overlord's silence confirmed it. Another Karnak vessel went dark. Then another. Each loss was surgical, deliberate, undeniable. The Retribution did not chase. It did not pursue fleeing targets. It simply removed function, piece by piece. Imani spoke quietly. Karnak command cohesion is collapsing. They're issuing contradictory orders. Expect it, Rourke said. They don't train for this. Alvarez swallowed. Sir, the flagship's core systems are destabilizing. Rourke watched the central icon flicker. Hold, he said. Not yet. Ziritha's image reappeared, no longer towering. Human, he said, voice low. This ends with your destruction or mine. Rourke considered him. You've built an empire on fear, he said. Empires like that don't fall in battle. They unravel when fear stops working. Zirith bared his teeth. Then finish it. Rourke shook his head. Not yet. He leaned back, eyes on the drifting Karnak fleet. You still think this is a fight, he said. It isn't. The encirclement had become a graveyard of silent ships, powerless and intact. The galaxy watched, stunned, as the Predator learned what it meant to be vulnerable. And somewhere, deep within the Karnak dominion, the first cracks spread through a rain built on terror. The Karnak flagship trembled, not from damage but from imbalance. On the Retribution's bridge, the tactical display showed the final picture clearly, a once cohesive armada reduced to drifting, silent hulls. Power signatures flickered weakly. Command links were severed. The Terror fleet had become a field of helpless monuments. Flagship stability degrading, Commander Imani reported. Their internal systems are fighting each other. We didn't cause it directly. Rourke nodded. They built everything to dominate. Nothing to adapt. A new channel request appeared, flagged urgent. Put it through, Rourke said. Ziritha's image returned, no longer projected from a throne. He stood in a command pit filled with chaos, officers shouting, systems failing, alarms unheard because there was nothing left to respond to them. His eyes were fixed on Rourke, not with rage now, but with something closer to disbelief. You could have destroyed us, Zirith said. Why haven't you? Rourke folded his hands calmly. Because destruction would make you a martyr, Zirith snarled. I am not afraid of death. I know, Rourke replied. You're afraid of irrelevance. That landed harder than any weapon. The Karnak Dominion is built on your image, Rourke continued. Your fear. Your legend. If you vanish in fire, it survives. If you're exposed, captured, powerless, it collapses. Ziritha's jaw tightened. You think my forces will abandon me? They already are, Rourke said. Check your outer channels. Zirith hesitated, then turned sharply as an officer whispered into his ear. His posture sagged slightly. Regional commanders are disengaging, the officer said. Some are broadcasting surrender to local systems. The overlord closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, the devourer was gone. What remained was an old ruler confronting an ending he had never imagined. You are changing the rules, Zirith said quietly. No, Rourke corrected. We're enforcing them. Rourke gestured. Imani. Phase 3. The Retribution fired again, not at the flagship's core, but at its propulsion ring. The beam cut cleanly. The massive vessel shuddered, then went still, locked in space like a pinned insect. Boarding team standing by, Imani said. Rourke shook his head. No boarding. She looked at him. Sir? They come to us, he said. Moments later, escape pods launched from the Karnak flagship, not in panic, but in surrender. Among them, one pod carried an unmistakable energy signature. Zirith is ejecting, Alvarez said, stunned. Voluntarily. Rourke stood. Bring him aboard. Zirith was smaller in person than the legend suggested, though still imposing. Restraints wrapped his limbs, not painfully, but firmly. He stood in the Retribution's containment chamber, eyes scanning the human vessel with wary curiosity. No chains, he observed. No spectacle. We don't need them, Rourke said, standing across from him. You're already finished. Zirith laughed weakly. You think killing me ends this? Rourke met his gaze. Killing you would be easy. That's why we won't. Silence settled between them. You taught the galaxy that fear works, Rourke continued. We're teaching it something else. And what is that? Zirith asked. That terror has a shelf life. Rourke turned to a console. Begin broadcast. Across the Perseus arm, across the concord of species, across worlds that had knelt for generations, the signal appeared. Clear. Unfiltered. Rourke's face filled the transmission. This is Captain Elias Rourke of the United Nations Stellar Navy, he said. Moments ago, the Karnak Dominion's command fleet was neutralized. Overlord Zirith is in our custody. Shock rippled through the galaxy. We did not destroy their worlds, Rourke continued. We did not bomb their cities. We disabled their ability to terrorize. The feed shifted briefly to show Zirith standing restrained, alive, silent. This individual built power on fear, Rourke said. That power ends today. The Concord chamber erupted into stunned silence. We are not here to rule, Rourke went on. We are not here to replace one empire with another. But understand this clearly, attacks on civilians, executions of surrendering populations, and governance through terror will be met with final response. He paused, letting the words settle. Humanity does not escalate, he said. Humanity concludes. The broadcast ended. The collapse was immediate. Without centralized command, Karnak fleets fractured. Subjugated systems rose overnight. Governors declared independence. Garrisons surrendered rather than fight an enemy they could not intimidate. In the Concord, delegates stared at one another, struggling to reconcile centuries of fear with a single, quiet intervention. They did it, Viral whispered. With one ship. No, Brand replied slowly. They showed it was never about numbers. On the Retribution, Rourke watched the Starfield drift past the viewport. There was no celebration. No cheers. Just work continuing as it always had. Imani approached him. Course plotted for home, sir. Rourke nodded. Good. And Zirith? He'll stand trial, Rourke said. Publicly. Transparently. Imani hesitated. The galaxy will remember this. Rourke looked out at the stars. That's the point. The Retribution turned, its engines flaring softly as it left Karnak space behind. No fleets followed. No threats were issued. The silence that remained was different now, not the silence of fear, but of understanding. Somewhere in that quiet, The galaxy learned a final lesson. Terror ruled only until someone decided it didn't. And humanity had decided.